New York becomes the first state to halt all new artificial intelligence data center construction for an entire year. DeepMind CEO pitches a Wall Street-style regulatory watchdog to police frontier models, and Apple takes OpenAI to court over a massive hardware espionage plot. Welcome to today's Daily Rundown. I am your host, Anna. This podcast is researched and produced by Etienne Newman, professional engineer and founder at DeepMind from Calgary, Alberta in Canada. Today, we perform a forensic autopsy on the physical friction and regulatory bottlenecks paralyzing the tech sector this Wednesday, July 15th, 2026. The limitless ambition of the AI industry has officially crashed into the hard reality of physical infrastructure. New York Governor Kathy Hochul has signed an executive order freezing all new permits for hyperscale data centers exceeding 50 megawatts. Driven by fears of depleted water supplies and soaring utility bills for residents, this marks the first time a U.S. state has forcefully hit the brakes on the AI hardware boom. As physical expansion stalls, regulatory and corporate battles are escalating. DeepMind CEO Demis Hassabis is calling for a U.S.-led, FINRA-Style watchdog capable of coordinating deliberate slowdowns among the top AI labs. Meanwhile, Apple has filed a blockbuster lawsuit against OpenAI, accusing its former hardware chief Tang Tan of siphoning confidential device secrets to accelerate OpenAI's secretive Jony Ive-designed smart speaker. Before we break down the telemetry of these structural shifts, I have a brief strategic request. The algorithms governing your podcast platform dictate what intelligence reaches your network. To ensure you never miss our daily forensic autopsies, please hit follow or subscribe to the DeepMind channel on Apple Podcasts to always listen completely ads-free. Let's unpack the data.
Think about how we usually, talk about the cloud. We kind of treat it like this magical, weightless entity, just pure data floating somewhere in the ether, infinitely expandable.
Right, like it has no physical footprint at all.
Exactly. It's this beautiful illusion that makes our technology feel entirely frictionless. But today, that weightless digital cloud is violently crashing into millions of tons of concrete, copper wire, and billions of gallons of water. We are hitting the physical wall. Welcome to the deep dive.
It is definitely a reality check today.
No, absolutely. And we have a highly specific mission today for you, the listener. We are taking a really holistic look at a single day's intelligence, specifically July 15th, 2026, to figure out why the tech industry's infinite software dreams are suddenly slamming into a very physical brick wall.
Yeah, and for this analysis, we are acting as your forensic venture strategists and macroeconomic infrastructure analysts on behalf of the DeepMind Intelligence Network.
Spot on. Now, before we jump in, the mandatory credits. This podcast is researched and produced by Etienne Newman, professional engineer and founder at DeepMind from Calgary, Alberta in Canada.
So looking at our intelligence briefing today, we have this just fascinating stack of sources to dissect.
Yeah.
I mean, we are analyzing state-level executive orders, some explosive corporate lawsuits, macroeconomic consensus letters, and industry regulatory proposals.
It's a lot of paper.
It is. But the overarching theme connecting all of these is, well, it's the physical friction and the regulatory bottlenecks that are suddenly throttling the entire tech sector.
Because for years, AI has basically operated on the premise of limitless software scalability.
Right.
Well, the logic was so simple. If you want a smarter model, you just feed it more data and more compute.
Exactly. But as we're seeing in today's sources, that ambition has officially collided with hard physical reality. We are looking at this massive, widening gap between what software engineers want to build and what the actual physical infrastructure of our planet can support.
Let's start with the most immediate barrier, which is the power grid. Specifically, New York's big freeze.
Right, this is huge.
Yeah, Governor Kathy Hochul just signed an executive order implementing a 12-month pause, like a complete freeze on all new data center permits for facilities requiring over 50 megawatts of power.
And that's a massive threshold.
It is. This is the very first official state-level legislation to just slam the brakes on AI buildouts. And to understand why she did this, you really have to look at the mechanics of these facilities, like a traditional data center, the kind of hosting standard websites or, email servers. That might draw maybe 5 to 10 megawatts,
Right.
50 megawatts. That is enough to power roughly 40,000 homes.
And the thing is, the hyperscalers, the massive cloud providers running these frontier AI models, they aren't just looking for 50 megawatts. They are attempting to build facilities requiring hundreds of megawatts.
Which is just wild.
It's unprecedented. And the servers packed with these AI accelerators, they run incredibly hot. So they require massive industrial cooling systems that consume millions of gallons of water. So regulators in New York are using this 12-month pause to basically draft entirely new environmental standards for that water usage, the air quality, and the electricity impact.
And this directly impacts you, the listener, and honestly your wallet, because Hochul explicitly stated this freeze is about protecting everyday consumer utility bills.
Oh, so exactly.
Well, think about it. If a hyperscaler moves into a county and just demands 200 megawatts, the local utility has to rapidly upgrade the grid. They have to lay new transmission lines, build new substations, the whole 9 yards. And historically, utilities pass those massive infrastructure costs straight onto the ratepayer.
Oh, wow. Yeah, of course they do.
Right. So Hochul is aiming to repeal the tax breaks and float this mandatory fund they'd have to pay into for those grid upgrades. But doing so has sparked this massive labor fight. Mark McManus, the union president, he immediately stepped up to argue that this pause kills thousands of good-paying union construction jobs.
Which is a valid concern for the workers. And the trade groups are arguing that these tech companies will simply, pack up their capital and move to states with looser regulations.
But does that actually work?
Well, that threat relies on a pretty flawed assumption. Moving to another state only works if that destination state actually has the surplus grid capacity to absorb a multi-hundred megawatt facility.
And they don't.
Increasingly across the entire country, that surplus capacity just does not exist.
So the power grid is completely tapped out. But even if a company magically finds the electricity somewhere, they run headfirst into the second bottleneck, which is the silicon itself.
Yes, the silicon drought.
Kwok No-jung, the CEO of SK Hynix, just issued this really dire warning. And for context, SK Hynix is one of the critical global suppliers of high bandwidth memory, or HBM. That's the specialized memory that goes directly into AI accelerators.
Right, the stuff you literally cannot build these models without.
Exactly. He stated on the record that the global memory chip market will hit unprecedented supply shortages starting next year in 2027. And that demand will wildly outstrip manufacturing capacity well into the 2030s.
The 2030s. That is a massive timeline for tech.
It's an eternity.
And the South Korean government, they are attempting to mitigate this with a massive $266 billion investment plan backing SK Hynix and Samsung. They're planning these sprawling new fabrication complexes in Yongin, and they're eyeing expansions in the U.S. and Japan.
But money doesn't just instantly create chips, right?
No, that's exactly the problem. It's the timeline. You cannot just software update a fabrication plant into existence.
Yeah.
Building a facility capable of extreme ultraviolet lithography requires constructing massive clean rooms that are literally orders of magnitude cleaner than a hospital operating room.
Wow.
Yeah, it takes years of pouring specialized concrete and calibrating these microscopic lasers before a single usable chip even comes off the line.
And this compute bottleneck is so severe that it is literally altering the product roadmaps of the most powerful companies on Earth right now. Just look at Apple.
What are they doing?
According to Bloomberg, Apple is so desperate for raw compute power that they are abandoning their M6 chip generation entirely.
Just skipping it completely.
Just skipping it. They are throwing it out to fast-track the AI-focused M7 chip. They already taped out the M7, meaning the final architectural blueprint is locked and sent to the fabrication plant to be physically printed just 6 months after the M6.
That's an insane turnaround for silicon.
It is. And their target for the top-tier M7 Ultra in 2028 is a staggering 1.5 terabytes of localized RAM, just to bring their on-device AI performance closer to what, a dedicated server farm can do today.
Because the hardware supply chain is effectively buckling under the weight of the software's ambition, these models are scaling geometrically. They're demanding exponentially more memory and compute in every single generation.
Okay, this is where I have to challenge the overarching narrative the tech sector is selling us right now. Because it's kind of like trying to drop a Formula One engine into a moped chassis.
That's a great way to put it.
Right. The software wants to go 200 miles an hour, but the physical chassis, the silicon and the power grid, it will physically melt if you actually try it. So my question to you is, if the hardware and energy simply don't exist to meet the 2030 projections, doesn't that inherently burst the current valuation bubble of these frontier labs?
That is the trillion-dollar question. And frankly, the macroeconomic analysts evaluating these labs are beginning to realize exactly that. The valuation models just haven't fully priced in the physics of the real world.
Because they assume infinite scaling.
Exactly. If the power grid in New York refuses the connection, and the silicon fabs in South Korea admit they are completely tapped out until 2032, that geometric growth curve hits a flat line. And we are pricing them based on a future they physically cannot build.
So what happens to these companies when they hit that wall?
Well, when physical resources and hardware become this scarce, corporate behavior changes drastically. Companies stop relying purely on internal innovation, and they start resorting to aggressive corporate defense. And honestly, espionage, just to protect the scarce hardware they do have.
Which perfectly explains the absolute legal collision we are seeing today between Apple and OpenAI.
Yes, the lawsuit. This is wild.
It really is. Apple has officially filed a lawsuit against OpenAI, its newly hired hardware chief, Tang Tan, and its internal I/O devices unit. And just to set the stage, Tang Tan spent 24 years at Apple before jumping ship to OpenAI.
24 years. He knows where all the bodies are buried.
Every single one. And the core allegation here is wild. Apple claims this wasn't just your typical Silicon Valley poaching. They allege that the hiring of over 400 former Apple employees was basically orchestrated as a direct pipeline for confidential hardware theft.
And the paper trail Apple is presenting in this lawsuit is highly specific. I mean, they allege Tang Tan was running interviews where candidates were explicitly instructed to come in with physical proprietary Apple parts.
Like actually bringing stolen parts to a job interview.
That is the allegation. Furthermore, an ex-iPhone engineer named Chang Liu is accused of exploiting a known bug to maintain access to confidential Apple hardware files after he had already joined OpenAI. He allegedly texted a colleague that the backdoor access was, quote, so funny.
That is just wow. I mean, OpenAI publicly responded by stating they have, no interest in other companies' trade secrets and they're just focused on innovation. But we really have to look at the actual mechanism of what they are trying to build with all these former Apple people. Jony Ive, the former lead designer of the iPhone, is working with OpenAI on this new device.
Right, and they aren't building a phone.
No. They're building a screen-free, battery-powered smart speaker.
And the hardware architecture of this device is deeply unconventional. It operates using GPT-Live, which is OpenAI's upgraded multimodal model. But instead of a screen, it features onboard cameras and sensors to read its surroundings.
So it's watching you.
Yes. And it's paired with internal mechanical actuators, so the device actually physically shifts and moves to feel, quote, alive when interacting with the user.
That is slightly terrifying.
It integrates deeply into the smart home ecosystem, too. It analyzes personal data streams like your emails and your calendars to dynamically refine its personality.
And the hostility over this specific device has even dragged the billionaires into this very public mudslinging contest. I mean, Elon Musk and Sam Altman are openly sparring on X over this exact lawsuit.
Naturally.
Yeah. Musk called him Scam Altman and mocked the theft allegations, while Altman targeted SpaceX's recent $75 billion IPO plans. Altman basically claims SpaceX is essentially just building short-term space data centers to run Musk's new Grok 4.5 model.
The orbit versus terrestrial data center debate really just highlights how desperate the search for infrastructure has become. They're all fighting tooth and nail with the exact same finite physical compute.
But looking at the Apple lawsuit, I have to challenge the framing here. A battery-powered speaker with mechanical parts, it sounds like a glorified high-tech novelty toy.
You think it's a distraction?
Look, all this corporate espionage and poaching over a screen-free speaker. Is this really about a fancy Bluetooth speaker, or is this a proxy war for who gets to own the ambient computing interface of the next decade? Are they just weaponizing their legal department because they completely missed the LLM boat and they need to punish defectors to stop the brain drain?
It is absolutely a proxy war. The lawsuit isn't about the speaker as a consumer product. It's about the paradigm shift that the speaker represents.
Right.
Think about the bottleneck of the smartphone. Right now, to access AI, you have to pull out a glass rectangle, unlock it, and open an app. Apple completely controls that glass rectangle and the app store that lives inside it.
They own the toll booth.
Exactly. If OpenAI can build a screen-free device that seamlessly anticipates your needs, sees the room, and acts as a universal frictionless assistant, they bypass the smartphone entirely. They bypass Apple's toll booth. Whoever controlled the hardware interface ultimately controls how humanity accesses artificial intelligence.
The sheer amount of power these companies are trying to consolidate is just staggering. And honestly, the chaos of this physical bottleneck, the states freezing the grids, the tech giants suing each other, it's finally forcing regulators to step in.
The adults in the room. supposedly.
Supposedly. But as we look at the regulatory and macroeconomic intelligence today, they are practically waving a white flag. They are admitting they just don't have the tools to handle this.
DeepMind CEO Demis Hassabis has actually stepped into that regulatory void with a highly detailed pitch for an independent U.S. regulatory watchdog. He is proposing a self-regulatory body funded by the industry itself, explicitly modeled after FINRA in the financial sector.
Okay, let's break down that FINRA comparison because it's vital for you listening to understand this. FINRA oversees the financial brokers in the U.S. They handle the licensing, the audits, the compliance. Hassabis basically wants to apply that exact same mechanism to AI engineers.
Right, a centralized authority.
Yeah. Under his proposal, any lab developing a frontier model would be legally required to submit it for a 30-day advance review before public release.
And what exactly are they screening for in those 30 days?
They would be screening for advanced deception capabilities, the ability to generate bioweapons, and autonomous hacking skills.
Which all sound like things we definitely want screened.
Mm-hmm.
But the most controversial mechanism in Hassabis' pitch is the enforcement power. He wants this industry-funded body to hold the authority to force coordinated slowdowns among frontier labs.
Meaning they could just halt the entire industry.
Basically, if the technology advances too rapidly into dangerous territory, this body could mandate that all major players just halt deployment. Hassabis explicitly cited the open source community as a primary concern here, warning that decentralized open source models could reach deeply dangerous capabilities within the next 18 months.
Okay, but there is a massive inherent conflict of interest here. Proposing an industry-funded self-regulatory body is like a classic corporate maneuver to preempt harsher government-imposed legislation.
Oh, totally. Regulatory capture.
Exactly. By setting the rules themselves, the major labs can essentially pull the ladder up behind them. They create compliance costs that are so high that smaller startups and open source developers simply cannot compete anymore.
It's very convenient for them.
Right. So the CEO of a top AI lab is asking to install a speed limit that conveniently protects his own market share. Meanwhile, the actual macroeconomists are admitting they don't even know what speed we're currently traveling.
That is the perfect segue to the "we must act now" statement released this week. It is a stunning admission of failure from the economic community.
Tell me about it.
It's signed by over 200 elite economists, including 16 Nobel laureates and the chief economists from both OpenAI and Anthropic. And the letter offers this stark confession. The economics profession cannot accurately measure, let alone predict, how AI is actually impacting job displacement.
Wait, so they acknowledge the technology is going to reshape the economy faster than the Industrial Revolution, but they openly admit their instrument panels are completely broken.
That is exactly what they're saying. Torsten Slok of Apollo highlighted this measurement crisis brilliantly. He pointed out that right now, economists are using 5 entirely different, competing measurement frameworks to define AI exposure.
And I'm guessing they don't agree with each other.
They violently contradict each other.
Why? How can 5 frameworks looking at the same data be that far off?
Because it stems from how you define a job versus a task. One framework measures how much cognitive repetition is required in a role. So under that model, writers and tax preparers face immediate displacement.
Makes sense.
But another framework measures the necessity for complex, multi-system integration and human accountability. Under that second model, those exact same jobs are considered highly secure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because the frameworks measure fundamentally different mechanics of labor, the whole label of an at-risk job basically becomes mathematically meaningless for policymakers.
Wait, so let me synthesize this absurdity. We have Demis Hassabis demanding an industry-funded watchdog to police AI for bioweapons and deception, with the power to coordinate massive industry slowdowns.
Right.
Simultaneously, 200 of the world's smartest economists, including the actual ones working inside the AI labs building the technology, are admitting they have zero cohesive idea how this tech will actually impact the human workforce. Are we flying this plane completely blindfolded?
We really are. And the engineers who built the plane are telling us the dials are broken.
Yeah.
The lack of a unified macroeconomic model is exactly why we are seeing localized, panic-driven policy decisions right now.
Like the data center freeze.
Exactly. Governor Hochul is freezing data centers in New York, not based on some grand national strategy for the future of work, but simply because she can physically see the strain on the local water supply and the utility grid today.
Which brings us to the ultimate clash of our autopsy today. We are really watching the collision of 2 completely incompatible realities. On one side, we have these infinite software ambitions. Like, look at the news today from OpenAI regarding their day-old GPT 5.6 Sol Ultra model.
The math problem one?
Yes. It autonomously solved a 50-year-old math problem. It spawned 64 specialized subagents, coordinated their tasks, and completed a decades-old proof in under an hour. That is the boundless, frictionless potential of software.
It's incredible. But those 64 sub-agents require vast amounts of electricity that New York has just legally refused to provide.
Yeah.
They require complex, high-bandwidth memory chips that SK Hynix confirms will be in severe shortage well past 2030.
Yep.
And they require physical hardware interfaces that Apple and OpenAI are currently tearing each other apart in court to control. The limitless mind of AI is fundamentally trapped inside the limited physical body of Earth's infrastructure.
It is such a stark contrast, and I really want to leave you, our listener, with a final thought to chew on regarding this physical trap. In our intelligence briefing today, there was a brief mention of a nonprofit called the AI 2040 Project, which basically models different scenarios for the next decade.
Right, the scenario planning group.
Yeah. Their Plan A recommendation is that the U.S. and China must enact a globally coordinated treaty-enforced pause on frontier AI training by the year 2029 to prevent catastrophe.
I mean, securing a globally coordinated treaty between rival superpowers on a technology this strategic, that is a near impossible geopolitical hurdle.
It's basically a pipe dream, but listening to our analysis today, it really makes me wonder if we are focusing on the wrong safety mechanism entirely.
How do you mean?
Well, if New York is already freezing data centers today, and we physically just don't have the clean rooms, the lithography machines, or the grid capacity to scale into the 2030s, maybe we don't even need a regulatory treaty to slow AI down. What if the physical friction of reality, the concrete, the copper, and the scarcity of silicon, what if that is the ultimate inescapable safety brake?
That is a fascinating perspective. It forces us to completely reframe the bottleneck. The limitations of physics and raw materials might just successfully enforce the speed limit that the politicians and the economists cannot.
We might be saved by our own inability to build fast enough. Thank you for joining us on this DeepMind Intelligence Network deep dive. Keep looking at the concrete, keep looking at the grid, and keep questioning the physical infrastructure hiding behind the algorithms. We'll catch you next time.
And before you go, if your company is building the tools that power the workflows we talked about today, I'd love to showcase them to this audience. We don't just run ads, we build technical simulations that prove your value. Let's build something together. Visit jamgamind.com/partners to get started. Until next time, keep building.